Welcome. Thank you for choosing to watch this recorded presentation of STEMify, your Read Aloud. I'm Tina Mott, your Regional Math Coordinator out of Northwest ESD 189 in Anacortes.
Welcome, everyone. I am Rimi Poon from Puget Sound Educational Service District, and I'm the Pre-K-5 Math System Consultant.
Today, we'll be exploring the practice standards for math and NGSS science engineering standards to STEMify our read alouds. Using the practice standards also supports us in teaching with equity.
Early childhood is the perfect time to develop math and science skills. Young children are natural mathematicians, scientists, and engineers who learn through play and use their innate curiosity to explore new things. When STEM education starts early, it taps into children's inclination to investigate. With a growing science, technology, engineering, and mathematics skill gap in Washington State, the importance of STEM education grows every day. OSPI is one of many organizations in Washington and nationwide working to improve STEM literacy. And I'm going to invite you to read the OSPI STEM literacy statement on your own. As for me, the highlight is about the ability to identify, apply, and integrate concepts from STEM to understand complex problems and to innovate to solve them. Let's look at math and engineering literacy statements. Mathematical literacy is the ability to analyze, reason, and communicate ideas effectively through posing, formulating, solving, and interpreting solutions to mathematical problems in a variety of situations. Tying closely with mathematics literacy, engineering literacy is about taking your mathematical concepts, your science concepts, and applying them in practical real-world problem solving.
These are the math practice standards and NGSS practice standards. These standards are the ways in which students engage with and become agents of their own learning. It's the ways they do. So I want you to take a minute, take a look at these. Do you notice any similarities? You may have found some to be very similar today. With our focus on mathematizing and STEMifying with engineering read alouds, we want you to take note of these practice standards in particular. In math, making sense of problems, being able to persevere in solving them, constructing viable arguments, and critiquing the reasoning of others, attending to precision, because in the ways that we are able to communicate require precision. The NGSS standards, asking questions, defining problems, constructing explanations and designing solutions, engaging in argument from evidence, obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information. As you can see, our theme today is being able to communicate our thinking and being able to critique the understanding and thinking of others. STEM education is not limited to building science and math knowledge. At its core, STEM concepts help children develop new ways of thinking, encouraging curiosity and analysis. Establishing these at an early age, when young minds are most malleable, establishes lifelong thinking skills. STEM teaching is an interdisciplinary approach to learning where students learn and apply concepts in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. By their very nature, early childhood settings are primed to support STEM learning. Talk is important in math. We help students by being specific in our vocabulary. When we're setting the table, instead of saying, put some plates on the table, we say, put 3 plates on the table. We support children's growth academically when we are intentional about our use of vocabulary during structured and unstructured time in the classroom. A number of studies have suggested that academically productive talk has many benefits in the classroom. Allowing students to talk about their thinking gives them more to observe, more to listen to, and more chances to participate in scientific thinking. Classroom talk helps push learners beyond their incomplete knowledge by making them aware of some discrepancies between their own thinking and that of others. We can see that math talk and science talk, the discourse in the classroom, is incredibly beneficial and important.
And introducing STEM is easier than you think. You may think that, oh, there are a lot of challenges to implement it. Maybe there's not enough time. I'm not comfortable with math or STEM. Or I'm not sure how STEM activities fit into my curriculum. You know what? We can overcome these challenges. One way is incorporating STEM in our read alouds. Everybody loves storybooks. When we choose a math storybook to read, we find that some storybooks were written to intentionally teach children math. These storybooks include a significant amount of math that plays an important role in the story. Other storybooks were not written to teach children math. However, they can still address some math concepts in the text and illustrations. Both types of storybooks can be used to help children discuss and investigate math ideas. I have learned about mathematizing from Alison Hinds and Tony Smith from University of Washington, Bothell, and I would like to give them a shout out for sharing their wisdom and love of math and literacy. As we pick books to read aloud for math, we usually plan to focus on particular mathematical concepts in the story, such as the example on the slide, like numbers, measurement, shapes, spatial relations, patterns, and data. And yet, there are different ways the mathematical concepts are featured in the story. It may be text dependent, like the story depends on the mathematics, or idea enhancing, to use the story to deepen math understanding, or illustration exploring. We can find math in the illustrations. Here is an example of text-dependent storybook, 5 Creatures by Emily Jenkins. This story is told from a small girl's point of view. This is the charming story of the 2 cats and 3 humans that live in her house. Throughout the book, she continued to count and categorize everything. And here are some examples. She was counting. 5 creatures live in our house, 3 humans and 2 cats. And she was categorizing. 3 short and 2 tall, 4 grown-ups and 1 child. 2 who can read and 1 who is learning. And also, there are many extended activities we can do with this book. For example, children can create their own book about who is in their homes, and they build or draw or talk about how many can fit in the house or an apartment unit. And it is nice to have students make connections between the story and math concepts and experience in children's lives. When they are working together and explaining their ideas, they are attending to the standards for mathematical practices. They are attending to precision in determining categories. They are learning through their own storytelling to construct viable arguments and learning to understand the reasoning of others by listening to other students' stories. What we do with Read Aloud makes the mathematical practice come alive. And here is a story we use for enhancing idea. The Very Hungry Caterpillar. This story follows the progress of a hungry little caterpillar as he eats his way through a varied and very large quantity of food until full at last. In this story, we can bring out math ideas to deepen students' mathematical understanding by providing opportunities for students to identify, compare, and contrast different mathematical approaches and representations. We can ask students to estimate how many things the caterpillar ate at the end, or to predict how many more things the caterpillar will eat the next day. When they represent the number of items eaten by the caterpillar using an equation, we can bring our students algebraic thinking. For example, and we can add up the number of items from Monday and Tuesday. We can write the equation 1 plus 2 equals 3. So total items eaten is 3 items. When we add in 3 items more from Wednesday, it is the same as adding 3 to the total items from Monday and Tuesday. When one student said it is 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6, another student said 3 plus 3 equals 6, we can ask students, what is the same in the equations? And what is different in the equations? To provide opportunity for the students to justify, critique each other's mathematical thinking. And asking questions help enhance mathematical ideas. The Little Penguin by Cynthia Ryland. This is the book that we chose to show illustration exploring and see how we can find math in the illustrations. And this book is about 5 small penguins and the mother chilled out in this playful minimalist approach to winter. The Little Penguin has some math that you can read out from the book, such as many mittens and matching socks, 1 for each foot. And we can also mathematize the story by using the illustration to provide more opportunities for students to explore mathematics. For example, when we see the 2 penguins on the left-hand side page and 4 penguins on the right-hand side page, and we can ask the student, how many more penguins on the right-hand side? Or we can ask an open-ended question like, how many? How many on this page? Student may say 2 penguins, or a student may say 4 mittens, or 2 scarves. Or a student can supersize, and they can say 2, because I can see 2 and I don't need to count. Or they can say 4 because I see 2 and 2 that makes 4. And we have the book resources and other links in this document. And you can use the bit.ly link, or you can use the QR code. And we will also have the video that you're going to watch in the document.
So now we're going to look at STEMifying read-alouds for engineering. We'll be using empathy-based engineering prompts. This was shared with us by Kim Weaver out of ESD 114. We appreciate her expertise in this area. So first, what does empathy mean? Well, it's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. It allows us to step into the shoes of another person so we can understand their feelings and their perspective and help guide our actions. So when we look at these 3 illustrations, we see they are each facing some kind of problems. Well, an engineer looks to find solutions to problems and use the mathematics in their solutions. So when we're thinking of what does that feel like to be in the backyard, and what if there are all these bugs or wasps coming at you? That is a problem. What can we do? How would they feel? Or I'm sure you may have experienced this yourself. Here, a young person is trying to reach an upper locker and it's just too tall. We can relate. What does it feel like when there are things that are out of reach that we need to get to? What solution can we find? What can we make? Or if the person who's carrying too many boxes, what would that be like? What can we do for that person? So engineers use the engineering design process. Well, we can use that to help us think about question prompts during our read alouds. So what might be the problem? There's asking our questions. We can help students imagine solutions, all different kinds. You might have students reflect on how a solution was created that your character tried, or you can have students also look at theirs and follow through on what is their creation. What might they improve upon when they try something and have to try it again? So empathy-based engineering prompts are questions we can ask. For example, asking what problems can you see? Whose problem is it? What might an engineer design and build to solve the character's problem? How would we know if the problem was solved? We're going to practice this together today. We're going to practice this by enjoying a recorded read aloud of The Crayon Man by Natasha Bibo. So we're in the document that we've shared, the notes document, you'll find a link to the video in your guided notes. As you enjoy The Crayon Man, be thinking about your empathy-based engineering prompts. We would like for you to pause this video now and enjoy the read aloud for the next 7 or 8 minutes, and please come back. Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed The Crayon Man. Here are some questions that teachers have shared with us in the past for engineering prompts. Do you notice something new for yourself? Do you see a question that you came up with? Questions spark curiosity. With good questioning, we can really challenge our children to go beyond what they know today and help them construct more advanced understandings. This is another wonderful book to STEMify with math or engineering. We believe you can find many mathematical questions and empathy-based engineering prompts when you read Grandpa's Quilt with your students. So as we go through the story from Betsy Franco, we can see that But Grandpa's quilt was too short. His toes were very cold. If we're thinking about mathematizing this story, we could be focusing on the shapes. What shapes do you see in the quilt? Will the quilt be large enough even for the little kids? How might you know? When thinking about engineering-based questions, we can see that we're at the beginning of that engineering design process. So we could be asking, what's Grandpa's problem? Have you ever had a problem like this? I wonder what it would be like. What ideas do you have to fix the quilt so his toes are not cold? How would you design a quilt so his toes are not cold? As we read through the story, all the grandkids are trying to help Grandpa with his problem. Here we see Anna cut off the top of the quilt. She sewed it to the bottom. In mathematizing this book, if it's our focus, we can ask, well, will the quilt be longer, shorter, or stay the same? And why do you think that? And we learn that, oh, Grandpa's toes were still cold. Feeling for Grandpa, being in his shoes, we could be asking ourselves some questions like, did Anna's solution work? Why not? We can question, so should we just give up or keep trying? And what could we try the next time? Engineers have to try and fail in order to learn and make something better. As the story goes on, we see another child. Lily cut out all the squares. She sewed them together again. What does a square look like? How is a square? And how is a square the same or different than a rectangle? So we can keep looking at geometry and ask some mathematizing questions. What we learn is now the quilt was long and thin, just like Grandpa. In our empathy-based questions, why does this solution work? How can we use squares to make different shaped quilts? Which quilt design do you think would work for you or for your parents or your grandparents? Why do you think it would work? Ask why, what, and how questions so students can explain their thinking. There are many great ways to spark curiosity and have your students thinking as an empathetic engineer or mathematician, where they are making connections to the story, themselves, and to the content. We have, just so you know, we have a link to a Padlet in your notes, and it has question prompts that other teachers have shared. And you're welcome to look at this for further ideas and feel free to share a few of your own. When choosing a storybook, we're going to be thinking about a few things. First of all, is the story good? What math or engineering concepts are present in the book? What concept are you focusing? How can you bring out a particular content area that's important? Think about what activity we can use to extend the learning that's in the book, where kids can become part of the story.
And here is another book we may choose, a wordless book, Changes by Pat Hutchins. And to take a look at this page, what math question can you ask? Some math prompts maybe, what do you notice about the shapes? Do you know what this shape is called? Oh, how are these two different shapes the same? And how are they different? How do you know? Now, how about this page? What engineering questions do you come up with? An example may be, what is the character's problem? What might an engineer design and build to solve the character's problem? And also there are many extended activities we can use, like having your student build a boat or a ramp or a high-rise building. And they can talk about any barriers while they were building their structures and what they did to solve the problem.
So we'll see that storytelling also happens in our curriculum in the form of word problems. Oftentimes, we switch from making sense of and connecting to the situation as story problem and move right into procedures and answer getting. So we want to suggest a routine called 3 reads. This routine supports that sense making that we love about our read alouds, and it can be used across STEM topics. So I'm going to say this is used frequently in math story problems because the problems are designed that you really don't know like what's important till you get to the end. So really, it is necessary to read those problems more than one time. So here's an example. Mom bought flowers from a farmer's market. She has 6 red flowers, some blue flowers, and 2 yellow flowers in her bunch. There were 10 flowers total. So we really like to kind of read this. We haven't gotten to the question, but as students want to read this the first time through, they need to make sense of it. Maybe they don't have experience with what a farmer's market is. How can we help them make sense and play act this problem? The question we might see is, how many blue flowers did she have? Or a question could have been, how many more red flowers did she have than yellow flowers? If a child was just looking at circling numbers and keywords, they might just be doing an operation that doesn't make sense with the story. So how the routine works is first reread all together that was read to them. And when they talk about what's the problem about, remove the question so they can focus on the story. Second reads all together. And we start asking, well, what is the question? So we may have put the question in the second read, or we can still leave it out and see what questions might students come up with. And the third read is they partner read together and they say what's important. And what they're looking at is making connections between the quantities, paying attention to 6 red flowers. Those go together. 2 yellow flowers go together. Some is what the number we don't know for blue flowers. And what does it mean that there were 10 flowers altogether? So why do we like this routine? Because it's great to use across all grade levels. And it's especially helpful in reducing those barriers and providing access for our English learners. But we know this is great for all students. And it really supports these 3 math practice standards: make sense of problems and persevere in solving them, reason abstractly and quantitatively, and use appropriate tools strategically. When we're connecting STEM to equitable practice, everything we do with our students, we want to be sure we're creating equitable space and using equitable teaching practices. Here are 3 bullet points to reflect upon as you plan your work ahead. Are we supporting diverse sense making? There are different ways that students can engage. Are we providing equitable access to knowledge and the learning practices that support achievement in science, engineering, and mathematics? This is why we bring in discussion. We want students to engage and have access to the learning in different ways. And are we using inclusive practices that position all of our students, especially students from non-dominant communities and students with disabilities, as meaningful participants, as having agency and identity in the STEM related topics? The questions we choose for our storybooks and story problems allow students to be those agents of their own learning. They're bringing their own identities and experiences to the story. When exploring a story, all students are allowed entry. We're going to create opportunity, not roadblocks for participation. Here are two quotes from the book Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. The power of culturally responsive teaching to build underserved students' intellective capacity rests in its focus on information processing. Introduce students to cognitive routines for deeper processing. Giving students the chance to actively process information is at the heart of culturally responsive teaching. I personally find this incredibly powerful. For it isn't that we provide the information, it's that our students are actively engaged in their own information processing for learning, that they have routines that help him process information and work through the struggling points.
Thank you all for joining our session. We wish you all best and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions, please contact us. Our emails are here on this last slide and also on the notes page. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.